Yo, what's up, everybody? We'll be starting in just a few minutes, just getting things set up. Thank y'all for joining, if you're one of the early folks joining. If you're one of the later folks watching the VOD, thanks for watching either way.
Do you feel no matter where you are, even if you're on a distant star, reach you without fear where you are, no matter who you are, our spirit will not fade, washing out the sun in your heart. What kind of joy is our destiny? Having to fight to truly get each other. So stop with those empty words. Show who you really are. Yeah.
Hey, what's up, everybody? All right. We're going to be starting in now. I might actually change the music. Let's see. Yeah, here you go. I'm just trying to... Okay. There we go. All right. So, folks, I'm going to turn this down, actually. Interesting enough. Okay. All right. I'm going to turn off what I'm listening to, because that would be fucking crazy if I was listening to somebody while I was also making videos. All right. What's up, folks? Thank you all for taking the time. I'm not doing video today because it's gross, and I'm gross, and everything's gross. But we are going to be talking about what happened at ComboBreaker this year. I also want to talk about Merfight in general and ComboBreaker, right? I want to give you all a little bit of an update as to what happened, you know, what's going on, all that stuff. Mr. MKL on their own stream did a recap. I thought I could do my own, but to be fair, I spent a lot of my time hanging out with Mr. MKL, so it was a good time. I guess I'll go over it just from the jump, right? The ComboBreaker for me has always been, and when I say ComboBreaker, I mean to an extension, Ultimate Fighting Game Tournament, right? UFGT. But that has always kind of been the place to go instead of EVO. You know, the mecca for fighting games. And I've never gone. But recently I've been feeling like I really need to stop going to fighting game events, mostly because every time I go, it's some degree of depressing or otherwise, right? It's just kind of sad for me. Not to say I don't have a good time, because I do, but there's always something that kind of puts me in the dumps. And I just thought, you know, I'm getting older. This is a point where I want to start building a family. I really need to kind of cut back on frivolous spending, like traveling to these fighting game events. But then I realized, you know, first of all, ComboBreaker is having their 10th anniversary. Second of all, this might be my real only opportunity to run a Merfight tournament with a bunch of people in person, at least for a while, right? Now, that being said, we're running Merfight at Boston Blue Beat, but I passed that over to Will, also known as Gaming Warthog. So if you're going to Boston Blue Beat, definitely sign up. I may be there, I may not be able to be there. You know, that's just how it is. So the footage, by the way, I'm showing you is from the Merfight tournament we had at ComboBreaker. We streamed it. Mr. MKL and I streamed it a couple days ago and talked about it, did some commentary. But I ended up going to ComboBreaker even though I really shouldn't have, right? I really shouldn't have financially. I shouldn't have for a bunch of other reasons, you know, just like it wasn't a good time. But I ended up doing it because, well, first of all, I I really wanted to kind of go off with a bang, right? Like, if there's gonna be a fighting game event I should go to, it's probably ComboBreaker at this point. And I really wanted to see if it was worth the hype, right? Like, a lot of people talk about ComboBreaker like it's the end all be all for fighting game tournaments, and I think in a way this Memorial Day weekend convinced me of that. Like, it really actually is. Um, it's worth your time. It's worth your money, right? There's a bunch of caveats with that, and as someone who likes to blog, I'm going to be updating my website, and you all can check out the blog if I write something about that. I won't go too into it in this stream, but basically, um, the vibe the vibe was that it was just like entirely positive. And I mean down to, down to even the silly stuff, right? And I won't go too deep into like the negatives, especially the end of my weekend, but the positives, even traveling around Schaumburg, traveling around Chicago, my train trip into Chicago, all that stuff, they weren't that bad. Um, I was having a really good time, and it was a blast being able to meet Mr. MKL, Sylvie Horse, Melly and Chains, Luis Garcia, plenty of folks that I've never met in person, including folks like Griffy Bones, um, Dr. Calexo. Sorry if I'm forgetting people, right? Alex Alchemy. Um, but I was also able to meet people too, right? Who I didn't know from Adam, like Luca Kona, who is a really nice person. They ended up entering the Merfight tournament. They're actually on stream right now. I'd already met, obviously, Mad Dog and Joe P. Real because they're in my area, but it was great to see them again. Seeing folks who I'd seen at other fighting game events, right? Like Duelist, who runs who helped run, I think, the community all in together sort of part of the event. Um, Saw Ultra David again, right? So there's plenty of people that I was really happy to see. I met Dicobros, right? Watermelon, these folks who I'd only really seen online. Um, it was a good time. But all in all, I mean, yeah, the hotel that we'd stayed at was really nice. It was a Marriott, if you're curious. I don't usually like simp for corporations, but if you need to stay at a hotel, I'm always happy to stay at a Marriott. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a good time. Duelist is a homie. Absolutely, Duelist is a homie. I appreciate you introducing me to them because I knew them, right? But not by that name. Um, I'd seen them at East Coast Throwdown every time I've gone, right? But oh, what is this? Oh, okay. Well, hey, what can you do? But yeah, it was a really good time. Going to Galloping Ghost was amazing, right? That was a real important time, I think, for us. It was a good time to just like wind down after traveling. It was a good time to be able to say, let's play some games together and not have to set anything up. It was almost kind of a museum as well. I realize I'm on Wi-Fi. I shouldn't stream on Wi-Fi. My bad. Um, but yeah, like it was almost a museum as well. It was just a total blast. I would love to go back there. Um, I wish there was a little bit more organization, but given their floor space and that it's the biggest arcade in the world, they do their best. I'm trying to think what else I really wanted to talk about in terms of ComboBreaker. I mean, I think, there's not much to say besides it's nearly perfectly run, right? Like, access to food was amazing. They decided to not segregate the artist alley, and they had artists set up everywhere. So wasn't like you had to go to the artist alley to see art and see artists and see community, folks. It was just a part of the event, and that was great. It felt amazing. Um, there were so many places to play games that weren't just the main games, right? I entered the hall twice, the main hall, I mean, once to, just see what was up, and another to talk to Ultra David. So basically, like, I never went to where a majority of folks were spending most of their time, right? I spent most of my time at the indie booth, at the community events. What would you call it? Floor, whatever you want to call it. I spent time at the arcade. I spent time at the BYOC, right? It was just the best event I've ever been to. It's the best, most well-run event I've ever been to, and I don't have any complaints. As someone who has severe dietary issues, Schaumburg was really accepting and really accommodating. The event, not so much, but like I can't ask for that, right? Out of an event, like it wasn't a big deal that the vendors didn't know what they were serving me. That's not a huge deal, right? I just won't eat there. But I think the one thing I will mention, and I'll say this for the punk in our lives, I think it's a little whack that they had the sponsors that they did, right? Obviously, I'm a huge jerk when it comes to Chipotle, right? I think they're a good restaurant insofar as I liked eating there when I could, but politically they're pretty ass, right? They had serious issues with giving people illnesses. They've had issues with stealing from their employees. So, like, just politically having them as a main sponsor is kind of ass. But I understand that Rick the Hatto is not in a real situation to be able to be flexible there, given that they're the main sponsor of Evo. But then also there were a bunch of sponsors who were basically like their main product was one of the 5 largest allergens, right? So folks like Punk or others with a nut allergy just, I mean, it wouldn't be reasonable for you to attend, right? And obviously, folks with immunocompromised, people who are immunocompromised. There we go. Probably shouldn't be attending events like this anyway, but it just made it especially more difficult for folks like that. I know there was a person who was doing cosplay as like Chibi Blanca, and they were saying, yeah, I need to either like wear a mask or be in the suit, or else anybody in this place could be having pistachios or whatever. So that was a bummer. Not for me specifically, but just knowing that like there's a certain degree of people who can't even attend the event because of the sponsorship. I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, there's really not much else negative to say. I'd say I have more negative to say about Chicago than I do about Schaumburg or about ComboBreaker, so I'll leave that for another time. I did end up running a Merfight tournament, as you can see on the screen, all thanks to folks like Mr. MKL, Sylvie Horse, Black Atlas, Dicobros, Joe P. Real, Mad Dog, Luca Kona, Griffey Bones, Alex Alchemy, Dr. Colexo, all the people that entered, right? Huge shout outs to them, because to be fair, it was one of those things where like I didn't even know I was going when I signed up. I just bought the ticket, right? The spectator ticket, which was $100 by the way. Is it worth $100 to go for 3 days? Yeah, absolutely it is, no question. But is it still a lot of money for a spectator badge? Yeah. And does it cost $70 to go to Boston Blue Beat as well as a spectator? Yes. And is that lame? Also yes. Is that their fault? No, right? I don't think it's their fault. I think it costs a lot of money to run these events, and them asking that price I think is completely reasonable. It just sucks, right? Yeah, I mean, there really wasn't anything else to say negative, but yeah, Merfight ended up running really well. We chose the Saturday slot late at night, thinking most people are going to be done with their tournaments by then, right? Unless you're in top 8 of something important, or even if you're not, right? If you're doing something on Sunday, Saturday night's like a good time to hang out. Good, I think most people expect to be doing something late Saturday night, so. We ended up running the tournament from like Saturday, or excuse me, well, technically, yes, Saturday at 10 p.m. to Sunday at 12:30. But we also had a money match happen in between winner semis or loser semis and grand finals. We had, folks kind of disappear and have to go do their thing for a bit. So I think it ran as smooth as we could have had it run. The the laptop I was using had kind of a fritz when folks would touch the electrical cord and stuff like that. So if other people were plugging into the power cable, it would cause some issues. But otherwise, the two setups we had ran really well. As you can see, we ran footage for it. Doesn't seem like the footage capturing caused many issues in terms of the actual playability of the setup. So I was happy, all in all. So what else do I want to talk about? I mean, I commentated this with Mr. MKL, so I don't have to go into the matches per se. I want to talk about Merfight in general, right? Merfight 1.5. I want to talk about the potential upcoming patch that Matrified has, I don't know what you want to call, like revealed or spoiled or announced. Yeah, that there may be a patch. I don't know. That's all we got. But I wanted to talk about some of the things that I'd like to see in that patch, right? Some of the things that I think would be important to the longevity of the game, and whether that's stuff that's chosen as acceptable feedback, that's not really important to me. I just want to express how I feel about the game, right? That's Matrified, do what you will with this feedback, and I've already posted on the Discord, so it's not like they don't already know. I will bring it up on my Discord so that I can actually read it. But yeah, there we go. I don't want to mess up what I'm actually already doing. Okay, great. So, in terms of... Oh, can you not... Wow. Ugh. Discord sucks. Sorry. Alright, let's go back. So, there's some general things, right? I think, just to be clear, I think Merfight's amazing. There's a reason I keep playing it and evangelizing it. There's just a whole lot going on, and it's one of those games that no matter how much I play it, I never really feel like I burnt out. I burnt out on hosting events, right? But I don't think I burnt out on the game ever, so that's always a good thing. I want to think about some of the universal changes first that I'd like to see. I think, and by the way, as I say, I've posted this in the Discord, so if you want to see it, you can see it firsthand. It's right in there. But in terms of universal changes, I think it would be important to have something on the screen. Oh, hello. There we go. Something on the screen that tells newer players what's going on in regards to easy inputs and the type of inputs that a character is expected to have, right? So there are 3 charge characters in the game. Not to say that there aren't charge moves outside of that. I think there used to be at least. But Gamma, Bolt, and Odon all have charge moves. If you turn off the easy input feature, that doesn't actually matter if you're playing those 3 characters, right? If you're playing a character with a charge input, you'll always be able to perform their easy input alternative. And that makes sense. There's a reason to that. Matt's talked about it. I think it's cool. There's a way to do charge and uncharged versions of moves, right? There's no way to mess up your charge move. You'll always get a move as opposed to standing jab or whatever. You'll get a different one, like, different strengths, different weaknesses, but pretty much the same move. Now, I think that's really smart, but one thing we ran into in the tournament was explaining to newer players what that meant, right? There's an easy input system, and also it doesn't matter for 3/14 of the cast. That's kind of weird. So there are games like Marvel and Vampire Savior and all these other games that when you select your character, you then select a mode. For most of those, instances, it's, do you want to play the normal accepted mode or some other BS that, either is for accessibility for players who don't know or like to do motion inputs, or I think in the case of Vampire Savior, it's like, do you want to do turbo or slower mode? And most people pick turbo because that's the tournament standard. I think it would be helpful in Merfight to have the game come up and say, like, do you want easy inputs? Now, that's not to say that the game doesn't have that in its button select and in its character select. It does. but I would love it to be more obvious. So obvious that it's annoying, right? I'd like it to be annoying for other players. You can just toggle that off in the settings, right? That's something that Marvel lets you do. It's very easy to go into Marvel settings and just say, hey, stop asking me if I want easy inputs, because I don't. I never want easy inputs if I'm playing Marvel, because it's a different game. But in Merfight, it's not a different game. It's the same game, and it works really well. So I think being more obvious about the easy input system and more clear about what characters it actually impacts, I think is important. All right. All right. Next. I think I mean, a couple changes I would make to the aesthetic. What would you call it? Not really aesthetic, but like how the game is, how the game conveys information, let's say, right? So one thing I would like is if a player has armor and they're hit or block, they block something, whatever, that they get a unique sound effect. I would love for it to be very obvious audibly that your attack was either, armored through or, I guess that would be it, right? Armored through. No, if a player who's armored blocks, that should still happen too. So yeah, anything like that basically. Just a little like metal on metal clink sound, I think would be really really good to convey the game state immediately to those players. Right. All right. So in terms of individual characters, there's some stuff I would love to see, right? But I think in terms of Gigi, I would like to have, if it's not already, because this is something that like I need to actually check, but I'd love for QCB Heavy Punch to be safe on block, and I'd love it to be plus enough that you can link into a light. One of the things that she suffers from is having special moves, normals that are punishable on block, that can cancel into special moves that are punishable on block, that can cancel into supers that are punishable on block. So she really doesn't have an option for if she's doing something that's unsafe on block to become safe, except for pop canceling, obviously. Now, pop canceling has its own questionable efficacy in those cases, but I would say giving the opponent one opportunity to break QCB Heavy Punch rather than two would help the move a lot, right? Right now, you can punish it before it comes out and after it comes out, or if this has been changed, then recently. What I do know is you can't currently link into a light afterwards on hit. And I think one of the issues is it's a really great overhead to mix up your opponent, but there's nothing you can really do into it unless you have meter, right? You can pop cancel out, you can do a super, but otherwise, that's it. You just get the, 60 damage and go home. After that, I'd say Gigi doesn't really need much, but some sort of playful ideas I had was to add a follow-up to Puddle Hop. That's kind of like Akuma's Demon Flip or Cammy's little air flip. What is that called? Hooligan flip? Something like that. I think leaning into the fact that she has some of the best grabs in the game would be an interesting way of making her unique across the cast. But, I'm not going to beg too much for changes. I think Gigi's really good to, in terms of fun to play. I don't think she's really good in terms of a competitive choice, if that makes sense. But that's okay. In terms of Atlas, I think I'm just not a fan of Atlas being able to explode his pillar in the air. I know people are, but I think it's both annoying for the player having to block it and one of his best options. So it becomes kind of like, all right, this is really annoying and kind of silly looking. So that's a really subjective thing, but most of these are going to be subjective, right? I think letting Atlas also explode his EX pillar, even if he's either left it by canceling out of it or been knocked out of it, would be cool. Otherwise it's just sitting there providing healing to his opponent. You can get rid of it, but not pop it, right? That's the change there. I also think it would be interesting to make EX Puddle launch high enough for follow-up, mostly because I think all three of Atlas's level 1 supers basically function the same, except for the fact that 1 or 2 deals more damage and the uppercut super vacuums in. So it's a little bit more reliable. I think giving the puddle super a reason to exist, especially in combos, would be super helpful for the Atlas players out there. All right, we're going to go over to Bolt. I think for Bolt, I'd reduce the hit advantage for his crouching light kick so that it doesn't link into itself. I think that's consistent with my thoughts on GG as well in the past, right? I think if you're going to have a mashable light, it probably shouldn't also open your opponent up. I think conversely, his charged light kick and heavy kick should be doubled in damage from 40 to 80. I think that move is really cool and really good, but outside of the mix-up opportunity, you don't feel great for hitting it. You really need to combo out of it for actually get much out of it. All right. I think there could be a change to how charged jumping light kick, heavy kick works. Maybe delay the hitbox a bit so that it works more like a shield to cover your mix-up rather than an attack itself. I also think, and this is going to be universal for characters like Gamma and Bolt who have install unique actions, but I think the window that the install should activate should be just a little bit later in the animation. The reason is it's really easy to pop cancel right after doing that and immediately get your buff, as well as it's really easy to trade with a poke and just get your buff regardless, right? So Gamma can press their install aggressively, immediately armor up, get punished for it, and then punish the punish, if that makes sense. So I think while that would be a nerf to those characters, it's the kind of tech that I think should be, nipped in the bud before it becomes an issue. I also think it's just a little bit cheap. It's one of those things, like, they have these installs that are so good, but there's no real way to stop them from doing them. You can punish them from getting it, right? But there's no way to stop them from getting it, really. All right. Next is Arctina. I think it'd be interesting to change the startup of her sweep 2 frames from 16 to 18. Otherwise, I think she's a fine character. She's really good. She's top tier, as we'll see later. But having the sweep be 16 frames, which I'm pretty sure it is, it makes the mix-up the 16-frame sweep versus the 23-frame overhead, and they both hit full screen or mid-screen, right? So it's like that would give you 2 frames of flexibility to not totally get screwed and take 33% damage or whatever. I think for Gamma, this is another change, by the way, another universal change. I would make it so if your command grab causes a hard knockdown or full wipeout, it does 15% more damage. Because right now, command grabs just do not feel like they do enough damage compared to the amount of work you need to put into actually getting them, and compared to the damage you could get from just actually doing a combo instead of doing a command grab. And the command grabs that lead to combos are even better because they get both worlds, right? So, Gamma, I think at this point, is probably the best grappler in the game outside of GG. Because Gamma's an actual grappler, or meant to be a grappler. But that's because they can actually pop cancel their grabs and follow up. Not even pop cancel. They can follow up out of their super grab regardless, so because it doesn't cause a hard knockdown. But on to Ro. I think what I would do is I would make it so his projectile counter has infinite projectile durability while it's active, so that when you use it against a multi-hit projectile, you're not completely hit, right? You would activate your counter and then immediately get hit by one of the other projectiles, basically. Or if it's a multi-hit, your projectile would trade with the other one, basically, the second hit of the durability. Or lose to it, depending on what kind of durability it has. I would make 0 changes to Nako. I think Nako is in a really good spot. I think Nako is strong and just unexplored at this point, so let's keep them as is. For Jargos, I would say adjust the wall to go away after a set duration or after having been hard knocked down. Currently, I believe it goes away when you get knocked down, and that is all the time. I also think we should increase the startup of their forward-moving uppercut. It's very fast, and I believe is also their wake-up option, so just increase that by a frame or 2. For Odon, this is another universal option. I would make it so that charge characters can begin charging before the round starts. This is something that, most games let you do, right? Are you holding this direction? Great. Once you can see your character, basically, they consider that when they want to start counting charge. So I would love to see that change if possible. For Octonia, I just suggested that maybe her install with both punches would increase her next command grab damage by 10%. Just another increase to her damage and really solidify her as the grappler as opposed to the grappler with mix-ups and the grappler with a fireball, right? For Jiro, I think my main thoughts were removing the ability of his EX punch from autocorrecting midway through, and then decreasing the startup of the kick follow-up to his armor stance, just to make it easier to cancel into. I think otherwise he's a really cool character. I think Clamilton, I would make it so that his super also doesn't autocorrect halfway through. And then I would say allow him to hold most of his buttons that spend his pearl to save it and not spend it instead, right? If you press, heavy punch, you'll get the fireball. But if you hold heavy punch, you'll save the fireball and just do a normal pearl. I think that would help with his combo consistency, as well as giving an extra layer of mind games, right? Am I going to throw the magic one or the regular one? All right, for strike, I think the only change I would make is to make it so that his EX, not his EX fireball, let's call it his buffed fireball, 2 hits instead of 1 hit. It used to be 2 hits. That would be an easy change to revert. Make it 2 hits again. I actually don't know if it would be an easy change to revert. Sorry, Matt. All right, next is Angelique. Please fix her grounded hover and her air hover, or air unhover, I should say, so that they work, I want to say as intended, but to be more correct, as other instances of hover or unfly mechanics work, right? So if you hover on the ground, I would love it to be as fast and reliable as if you had jumped and immediately pressed the hover button, right? The same button input, but with an up. Conversely, if you do air unhover, I'd love it to just cancel what you're doing and let her fall to the ground. Because right now it doesn't seem to actually stop you from hovering. It just reduces your height slightly. And if you're really close to the ground, it'll reduce your height and then immediately rehover, and I don't know how to stop it from doing that. So otherwise, I think that is it for the cast. For Clamilton, I also suggested moving around some of his values, right? For let's see. Oh yeah, his standing light kick links into itself. I think since that's a standing low, it probably shouldn't be the only button that links into itself. I'd give that to one of his, high moves or mids that can be blocked high and low. I would also make it so that their crouching light kick isn't one of their only plus moves on block, right? It hits low. It's your fastest normal. It already does so much. Give that bonus to something else. Make something else your plus on block button, right? And let's see. Oh, I would love to have extra leniency added to performing a roll. So right now, it seems like a button press that you have to time during a window. And I'd love it to work both if you're holding a direction and if you mash the direction. So I don't know if that's possible, but that would be great. I did a test of 14 attempts of trying to roll on knockdown. I only got 2 of them successfully. So I think that's something to mention. There's also restands in Merfight, as discovered by Dicobros during the Merfight tournament. It seems like Matt wants to get rid of them, and I think that's totally fine. I just want to mention that there are games that utilize that technology for interesting effect. So that's something to keep in mind. There's also a couple other bugs, right, that we discovered, but I think ultimately that's about it. That's what I would ask for out of the new patch. What Matt is going to do is completely up to them, and I totally understand and appreciate that. But either way, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to go check on my cat, see if I can get her inside, and then come back and we're going to talk tier lists for Merfight. All right, I will be right back. Alright, homies, I'm back. Sorry about that. Um, my cat came in, so we're good. Alright, we're gonna switch over to the bracket. And by bracket, I mean the tier list. Alright, so, wait, do we not have... Oh. Let me add, no, not a media source. What is it? There you go. Now we get some audio. What are we listening to? Jin Kazama. Good. Alright, so what we're going to do today is talk about Merfight. We had the tournament at ComboBreaker, and it opened my eyes to a little bit. We have... Oh, you know what? I should bring up the old one. Let me find the old tier list that I made. Okay. So, let's see if I can... Let's see if I can save this and show it to y'all. Alright, so here's the old tier list, right? I don't remember when I made this, but, yeah. So, obviously, from the get-go, I think Arctina and Odon have been contenders, right, for the top position. I think even after nerfs to bugs and clearly unintended gameplay, these characters have survived. Arctina has been nerfed repeatedly in regards to her damage, but that's clearly not what makes her good. So I think that's I mean, it's a good balancing factor, I think, right? It shows to me that Matt knows what they're doing. In terms of Odon, I think they just have a lot of stuff that's unexplored because the stuff that is really good is so obvious, right? It creates this, like, power vacuum kind of thing where if there wasn't something so obvious, there would be other things that people would be exploring. But right now, you can kind of just set up statue and run the mix, right? Whereas I think there are still more interesting things to be found. You know, Bolt, Jiro is new at the time, as was Clamilton, but you know, Bolt is a classic mainstay in Merfight. He's the Great Wall of China, right? For lack of a better word. He's just the super defensive character that can also explode on you with meter, which is everyone in the cast, but also especially them. I'm going to turn off my AC real quick, see if that helps. All right. And then Jiro. Jiro is very new, but also clearly good, right? They have all the tools that a good character needs, and that's basically it. They're still unexplored, but they're the kind of character who's, you know, interesting, funny. They're kind of a meme, so people gravitate towards them, and we know that the basic Jiro gameplay is really good. Neko, at this point, I think was still rather unexplored, and is still pretty unexplored. But this, you know, I think this was back when Codirius and stuff, and folks were still playing them. Ravecoon and other folks. So, I may have a different opinion right now, but I think in general, they're really strong, bordering on, you know, super good, but also have a lot of room to explore, like most of the cast. I think Angelique, at this point, people knew how good they were, and it's just a question of matchup, I think. We'll see if that changes, as opposed to, you know, what it was then, but... For Dragos, I think it's really just they got a bunch of nerfs, right? Codirius played them just to great effect for a while, right? Almost a year. And that resulted in some changes to how they play, some of which I disagree with, some of which I agree with. And in one way or the other, they've just become a little bit less popular, and the stuff that was obviously good has been toned down a bit. So that's why I would say they're probably around B tier, or at least they were back then when I made this tier list. King Ro is another character that is kind of like, there's a pretty obvious game plan based on what's good about their kit, but I think that also means there's a lot more to explore. Plenty of interesting things to do with their ability to freeze the opponent and increase their hit stun, as well as their variety of parries and anti-projectile opportunities. So I think there's a lot of stuff to explore there, and they'll probably jump up once we see more character, what do you want to call them, character champions? Character specialists, that's the word. So onto Atlas. I mean, Atlas is kind of the middle of the road guy, right? He's probably king of B, if you want to agree with what I thought back then, at least. Strike, very similar, right? Really good in certain situations, but kind of outshone by others. I should probably put him behind Gamma for that reason, right? He's not as good of a grappler, but also he's not as good of a rush down, and he's not as good of a keep away. So he plays a lot of different play styles, but none of them as well as others. So he doesn't really get a superlative in anything except for probably ability to keep his hurt box really close to the ground. Like, he still has the ability to hide his hurt box in some instances, but either way. On to Gamma. They're like the quintessential grappler, right? They're the one grappler in this game who I think really can run that gameplay without much deviation. That being said, I think they actually do pretty well, right? Because they have all these other alternatives. They're not playing Street Fighter 2 Zangief. They're playing something completely else, but they also can grapple the hell out of you. Back then, I thought GG was pretty ass, right? I thought GG was, like, worth quitting the game over at one point. But, you know, whatever. I'm just going to spoil one thing. I think my opinion of GG has changed drastically. So, there you go. But either way. Clamilton was very new at the time I made this tier list, so it was really hard to say, right? New character syndrome. Not a lot of people playing them. But if you watch the tournament at ComboBreaker, there were a lot of people playing them at ComboBreaker, so. And then Octonia, I think they suffer from basically having to play Street Fighter 2 Zangief, right? In a game where everyone's playing Marvel 3. So they don't really get reward for their grabs as much as they get for just running the general high-low mix, high-low overhead mix, right? And then in that case, they're not as good at that as other characters, so they do kind of suffer on character select. All right, now we can get rid of that, because that was my old tier list. Now, I know there are some people in chat still, potentially. If you folks want to chime in, please let me know. Otherwise, no worries. But I'll be chugging away at this. Let's see. So I think clearly there are some obvious ones we should get out of the way, right? I think Arctina is still probably S tier. Just shooting that out there, right? I'm going to start... I'll move things around if I need to, but I'm pretty sure Arctina is somewhere around S tier. Along that note, I think Odon is still probably somewhere around S tier, right? But they're both just like queen and king of the Arctic Kingdom, but that's not lore accurate, obviously. It's just they both have so many options. The game is sort of like anti-Oki, as Matt has said in some ways, but also in how it's designed, right? You have really strong options to defend against Oki, including being able to cancel your super early, being able to do these, you know, invincible reversals. There's a lot of things you can do. You can wait until you actually wake up, do an uppercut, and then pop cancel, right? There's a lot of things, but they still have tools to set up really strong Oki, right? Arctina can set up her icicle. Odon can set up their statue. I mean, I'd say Odon's better, right? If we're gonna rank them left to right, I'd say Odon is better than Arctina. Odon has the best unique action in the game. Odon has some of the best damage in the game. Odon also has a standing low, excuse me, which is something you'll notice about all the top tier characters. Odon and Arctina both have a standing low. They also have really strong mix-up opportunity, great combo opportunity, great damage. They follow up that damage into hard knockdowns, and then they basically turn those hard knockdowns into Oki, which you are going to have a hard time getting out of unless you have an invincible super to wake up with. So, you know, you're going to have to take the mix. And in both of these characters' cases, they have really strong mix. They have standing lows, they have instant overheads, they have great universal overheads. I'd say Arctina probably has the best universal overhead in the game. They have plenty of options. They can confirm off their lows relatively easily, right? They can confirm off their grabs. So there are just a lot of things both of these characters can do, and they kind of break the rules, right? I would say one of the design pillars of Merfight was potentially that Oki shouldn't be as strong as it is in other games, and I think these guys kind of break that rule. So let's keep them there for now, and we'll move on to the rest of the cast and see where we can go. I think Jiro is also probably in A tier. They're still rather unexplored, but you can tell that like even someone picking up the game and messing around can do pretty well with them. They have more options than that though, so the characters or players, I mean, who have focused on Jiro have proven that he has the mix, he has the keep away, he has, you know, to teleport out of the corner in certain matchups if that's necessary. An autocorrect super, right? It basically does the job for you. If you need a super to do your job and your taxes and also hit the opponent, that's what it's going to do. So it's got a built-in mix-up. It's got an autocorrect halfway through it. I think it has some iframes. So this is the kind of, you know, you're spending a bar, but that bar is worth a whole lot more than if you'd spent it on any other super. Similarly, I'm going to say Clamilton is up there in A. They have almost the exact same super in regards to it's a built-in mix-up that also autocorrects halfway through, moves the player towards the opponent, right? It feels like I'm complaining about Tekken 8, but these are good things, I think, about some of these characters. Maybe the autocorrect's a little whack, but whatever. And it also gives you a buff, right? It counts as a built-in install. Not his super install, but at least his, you know, both punch unique action. So that's really good. He has a really strong super in that regard, and I think it took me playing with him and seeing people play him in the tournament to really notice just how strong Clamilton was, because he does so much damage. I think the most damage in the game, and partially that's because he has access to poison, which we'll get to later when we talk about Nako, but I think his damage is just crazy, and then his mix-ups, while not amazing, are still really good. All four of these characters have standing lows, keep that in mind. And then he also has this install that can, in certain matchups, completely lock down your opponent, right? It's kind of Faustian in how it's random, but your opponent can't react to it just as well as you can, so it's random in both regards. I also think he just can play a really simple game, right? You can play a simple keep away, and if your opponent tries to keep away better than you, you can teleport, you can jump in at them with Tatsu, plenty of things to do. Also, his light Clam Tatsu is maybe not safe, but not punishable. So, yeah, pretty much safe. All right, moving on. I think it's worth putting Bolt in A. I think Bolt is, as I said before, like the defensive character in this game, and that means that it's going to be pretty unique, right? Like, I don't think there's many other characters in this game that play as defensive a gameplay as Bolt does. I felt this in the tournament when I was playing players like Diacobros who had GG, who forced me to go towards them, and that kind of broke my entire gameplay. So I think there are
plenty of ways to play against Bolt, but if you're getting mixed up by Bolt and you don't know what to do, it's going to feel oppressive, right? It's going to feel smothering. With the exploration that myself and others have done with the unique action, the charged light kick and heavy kick, I think he's going to also have some really good mix-up opportunities too, right? He's not just the defensive wall, right? He's also an incredibly strong Oki character. So I'll actually put him at the top of A. By the way, at the end of this, I will compare the two tier lists just so you can all see that. But, okay. Next, let's see. Let's get Nako out of the way. I think he's really good. I think he's actually better than potentially Jiro and Clamilton. I think Nako is the kind of character who was underexplored for a while, but now it's pretty clear to me that they have a lot of tools that, while they may not be the best in class, they add up to a character who is A tier, if that makes sense, right? They have a really strong uppercut. They have a really strong overhead that you can combo out of. It might not actually be an overhead. I think the EX version is an overhead, but either way, it's a really strong forward movement tool that you can combo out of. They have a really strong projectile. They have strong unique actions. They have a lot of stuff. They also have a super that basically plays the game for you. So the Rekka super is a built-in mix-up. It's a built-in invasion tool. It's a combo tool. It's everything you need and more. So, Artina, Clamilton, Jiro, Nako, they all have supers that basically play the game for you. And I'm just emphasizing that as something that makes characters good in this game, right? So that's not a complaint, just something that makes them good. All right. Let's see. I would say, and I'm gonna try to play as much of the board as I can, right? I don't like the people who are like, everyone in this game is S and A tier, because I love them very much. Like, I'm talking about comparatively, right? I'm saying if you sat down and you had to pick somebody, I'm trying to give you as much info as possible. I'm not trying to disparage the character or anybody who plays them. This is just a math thing. Like, somebody has to be the worst, right? So please, if I get rid of D, would that make you feel good? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody is D tier. Oh fuck! I got rid of C tier. Well, you're C tier now. Lowercase C tier. Here we go. All right. So, did that F up the whole thing? No, it didn't F up the whole thing. Nice. You know what? I might even be able to adjust the screen now, because y'all don't need to see the save load button. How about that? All right. Nor do you have to see all this garbage. All right. There we go. That's better. Hey, buddy, you want to go up on the bed? Yeah, you do. Come here. Come here, buddy. All right, I got chihuahuas to take care of, so here we go. We can still see the water under the screen. No. Okay, cool. And for the sake of my OCD, I'm going to make these connect. Perfect. So where were we? All right. We just put Nako up there in the middle of A, which I still agree to. I think that's good. I think poison characters are just strong. I think poison, getting around the damage scaling, is such an effective way to kill your opponent. And then it leads to chip kills, right? Even if you drop the combo and they still have 200 life left or whatever, right? You may melt that all away before they even have a chance to act. So keep that in mind for both Nako and Clamilton. I don't think anyone else can access poison anymore, even though Dragos and Angelique used to. Atlas. I'm going to say Atlas is a strong B tier character. Probably king of B, same as before. And that's because they have some of the best uppercuts in the game, right? Like, similar to Bolt in that they can make a wall of offense or defense if they really want to. But they also have some strong gimmicks, right? They can heal, they can gain armor, they can do this air pillar explosion that's really annoying and can sometimes glitch out. So there are a lot of things that you can do, right, with Atlas. He also has built-in mix-ups, right? If you want to do high-low mix, you can do that with his 2 specials. If you want to do frame traps, you can do that like just about anybody in this game can. But he especially can because his light puddle is plus on block, right? So you can do some jab frame traps after that. There's plenty of other things you can do, but he has a lot of options. He may not be the best offensive character, but to be fair, I think he does defense really well. So he's up there in top of B, in my opinion. I'm going to say Drargos is probably in C tier right now, and that's not because he's bad. It's because he's not working as intended, right? I don't think Wall is as reliable as it should be. I think the character shines when there's an ability to mix your opponent up or set up frame traps with the wall. And when they're not doing that, they're kind of just playing regular old Merfight, which is set up frame traps with meter, right? You know, do a move that's unsafe, they try to punish it, you punish with super. And they have much more interesting tools. So I would love to see some buffs come their way, right? Especially after getting some pretty heavy nerfs. Maybe deservedly, but at this point, no one's playing them because they're weird. And from that perspective, I would say they should gain maybe more benefit from what players need to put in to get out, but, you know, make it worth it, right? So, there you go. That's my thought process on Drargos. I don't think he's bad. I think he's great. Do I think he's wholly unique? Yes. Is that unique thing what makes him good? No. So there you go. That's my issue. I think what makes him good is what makes just about everybody else in the game good. I would love for his other tools to be emphasized so that he can play the kind of dumb shit that everyone else is already doing. And he kind of used to, right? But so, either way. All right, Angelique. I'm going to say Angelique is probably an A tier. She's probably, right behind Bolt, maybe ahead of Nako, but not very much. I think Angelique is the kind of character that will only get better with time, right? If someone masters her hover and how janky it is right now to input quickly, they can do some incredible stuff. I think if she gets buffs to, you know, the quality of life of her hover, she's going to be a menace, right? She already kind of is. Similar to Arctina, she doesn't really do as much damage as other characters, but she doesn't need to, really. She has the pressure. She doesn't really have the mix-up, right? She doesn't really have the high-low. She doesn't have a standing low. She doesn't have any of that. But she does have enough plus frames on her crouching light punch and, you know, right-left mix-ups with her her bubble cannon and other moves, right? She also has the best keep away in the game outside of maybe Row. So that's one of those things where, like, she fills a niche in the roster that no one else really fills. And in that way, I think she's really strong in specific matchups. There's going to be matchups that will just really be a pain in the ass for her, I'm sure. But I haven't run into too many outside of maybe Arctina. Right? Arctina is the kind of character who can sometimes just get through your keep away with a smart sweep mid-screen. But otherwise. All right. Going to Strike. I think Strike is also probably C tier. Pretty good, right? Maybe B tier. Yeah, B tier. Okay. He's low B tier. I'd say he's good, but not as good at grappling as Gamma, not as good at mix-up as Odon or Arctina or Jiro or Nako, you know, any of those other characters. But they can still run the mix, right? They have a plus frame jab. They have a command grab. They have plenty of ways to mess with their opponent. But I do think that the thing that makes them really unique, the ability to gain a buff when they're at full meter, is kind of... I don't want to say it's wasted, but I do feel like it's not as important as it should be. If that's something that the character... like, that's going to make the character shine. Right now, it's not as important. I think it kind of can be a menace, or it could have been a menace, right? Back when it provided this invisibility to the forward dash and all this other stuff. It might still actually do that. I don't remember. But outside of the invisibility, right, there really isn't a whole lot of reason to keep your meter with him. And the mix-ups that he gets are not a whole lot different from the other characters, right? His projectile is pretty good at keep away, but not the best. So he's not going to be keeping away Angelique or Ro. And his mix-up slash, presence in close quarters, let's just say, doesn't have the kind of prowess as other characters. Hey, what's wrong, buddy? What are you mad at, buddy? Are you mad that another dog exists? Yeah, you are. Okay, great. Damn, we got chat. Chat coming through my chihuahua as a ventriloquist dummy. Telling me I'm shit. Okay, so let's see. Next character. I think Ro is really strong, but needs some buffs. Maybe it's quality of life features more than buffs, right? Like, it would objectively be a buff, but I think having their anti-projectile tool work against so few projectiles is kind of a bummer. It also doesn't really give you an advantage. It kind of puts you back at square one because the projectile only has one duration, and any keep away character is going to be throwing way more than one fireball at you, right? Especially ones with multiple durability. If I said duration before, I meant durability. Sorry. So, Ro can do a lot, but I don't think it's because of his anti-projectile stance. I think it's because of his anti-projectile ice pillar, right? That's going to hit people full screen. That dominates keep away matchups. So, that, the spin, his safe reversal, his parries, which I don't think have really been explored fully, right? I think they're really useful, especially with the pop cancel system. But I think he has a lot of room to grow, but right now I'd say he's somewhere around high B. And if anyone wants to disagree, please do in the comments below. All right, next character is going to be Gamma. I'm going to say Gamma is probably up here in A. Maybe right here, I'd say. Middle of A for Gamma. They are the quintessential grappler, not because they necessarily represent whatever grappler is, but they are the best grappler in the game, I think. They want to be grabbing you the most. And that's because you can combo out of most of their grabs, right? That's like the big thing. It makes up for the lack of command grab damage in the game by turning your command grab into a regular combo. So it does kind of cheapen the feeling of being a grappler, right? You want to get the grab and that's it. You get some Oki, you get some damage, but having combos afterwards isn't bad. It leaves other characters like Octonia and Strike to fill that gap of just getting the command grab and clearly not getting as much benefit, but filling that grappler archetype a little bit more well. They also have a ton of other options, right? I should have started with the fact that they can armor up just by pressing 2 buttons, right? And it's immediate. I think it's frame 1. So that's the kind of thing that is crazy effective in a game with FADCs, right? You can armor up, pop cancel, and you're immediately charging at your opponent with a like Dragon Ball style homing dash that you can then immediately do some kind of bullshit out of, right? So it's just very effective, I'd say. All right, next. We're going to go to Octonia, and I'd say Octonia is still in C tier, probably below Drargos. And that's not to say they're bad, right? I'm really not here to say any of these characters are bad. All of these characters are great, whether you want to play anyone in C tier, anyone in S tier, they are all effective. The question is just, if you're entering a tournament and everyone is the same skill level, who has the best chance to win, right? Like, if everyone's Daigo, who has the best chance to win? So I'd say Octonia suffers from being a more traditional grappler, right? She plays the Street Fighter 2 Zangief kind of vibe. She doesn't have to, right? There's plenty of play styles, but she can play that. She also has pretty strong poking. She has pretty strong anti-projectile tools. Some pretty strong mix-ups as well with her what do you call it? Stunner? Octa Stunner. But because she's so focused on grappling, she really does suffer from the fact that grabs do not do as much damage as a combo would, right? You're going to do 50% with one bar most of the time. 50% with one bar and one pop for sure. Maybe 33% with one bar, I'd say, conservatively. And then 60, 70, whatever with a bunch of other meter, but not a whole lot more than that. But with Octonia, you're going to get, like, I don't know, 200, 300, something like that. And then not a whole lot of Oki afterwards, I don't think. So I think the character's going to need a lot of exploration to really see what is, there. Because the current game plan with her is play more of a bruiser bully kind of character than a true grappler, right? You're playing them more like Abigail or like Armor King as opposed to King or Zangief, right? So, all right, next is gonna be Gigi, and I honestly think Gigi is probably middle of C tier. Now, do I think that's totally different from where I put her on the last list? Probably not. I probably put her similarly. But does that mean that my opinion has changed on her? Absolutely it has. Gigi, especially in the ComboBreaker tournament, really shines in the hands of players who know how to play the basic Street Fighter fireball uppercut gameplay, right? They're not trying to mix you up close up. They're not really playing the mid screen. They're playing full screen because they want you to jump into their uppercut, right? I think if you can get your opponent to do that with Gigi, you're going to win every match. If you can annoy the hell out of them with her laser beams and then uppercut them when they try to jump over it or lock them down to the laser beams and mix them up either way, you're going to do really well with Gigi. However, if your opponent forces you to play anything but that full screen game, I think she's going to struggle without meter, right? I think she's the kind of character who is the jack of all trades, master of none. She does a whole lot of stuff, but a lot of it's punishable. She doesn't really have a gimmick, right? Her unique action is a hitbox that I don't think as a whole is very useful. You know what I mean? It's kind of like an extra uppercut that you can cancel into uppercut, but I don't see very many people use it. Her other unique action is a puddle hop, which is very useful. So I'm not going to say that that's bad. That is absolutely great. Being able to play KOF mix-up style short hops in the middle of your high-low game is great. It's a wonderful addition to her set. But I think the initial pitch for her was that she was a mix between Cyclops and Cammy. But she's missing a lot of the things that make both Cyclops and Cammy tick, right? So like Cyclops has a Tatsu to keep moving forward. He has a uppercut that shoots a fireball up in the sky for additional vertical coverage, right? He has a laser beam super that you can aim, so you can basically keep yourself safe anywhere your opponent is on the screen. She doesn't have that, which is fine, but I wouldn't start the conversation off with a new GG player by saying, oh yeah, they play like Cyclops. I would say they have a laser beam, which is true. But I don't even think the laser beam really plays like Cyclops is, as much as, it's similar visually, but either way. She also really doesn't have what Cammy has outside of a uppercut and a dive kick, and even her dive kick doesn't really work the same. So, I wouldn't want to put someone off on the wrong foot by saying that she's either of those characters as an amalgam. She's more an homage, right, to those characters. She is her own fish. She's not, and I appreciate that of Matt and their design. That being said, she does have some of the best normal grabs in the game, right? If you get a normal grab with Gigi, your opponent is going to get mixed into hell. You get a full combo, you get a potential grab mix that does circumvent the air reset sort of grab invulnerability that you normally get. And that's because your dive kick can whiff in the air and you end up recovering right next to them. But outside of that, right, there is a lot that GG can do, but it's not super unique. So I would like to see some changes for her, but at the moment, I'd say if you're going to play her, it would be a matchup decision, or she'd be a great low-tier character, right? She's great to pick up if you don't know the game, because you know how to shoot fireballs and do uppercuts. But, you know, your opponent probably also doesn't know how to punish half of her stuff. So she's gangbusters at low levels, probably a little bit tougher to play at higher levels. And that, you know, kind of similar to Ryu in a lot of ways. But either way, that's the end of my tier list. Let's take a look at the old one for comparison. Very similar. I'd say the main difference here, actually, let me make this even bigger. There we go. The main difference here is I clearly think Odon is better than Arctonia. Or wow, Arctina. Excuse me. Absolutely, I think that Odon is better than Arctina at this point. I still put Bolt, Angelica, Neko, and Jiro up in A tier, and I stand by that. There's been a little bit more Neko play as of late, so I do think he's better than Jiro, and more Angelique play as well. So I think that kind of gives me the evidence for her being higher than both of them. But putting Clamilton all the way from C to A, I think makes a lot of sense now that I've played them more, saw them a bunch in tournament, right? Like, this was the first play tier list I did was very theoretical. Second one, a little bit more objective, because we got to see what they were actually able to do in tournament. That being said, what did we bumped Gamma up, and otherwise my B tier is very similar, except Drargos got bumped down to C, and Gamma got bumped up to A. So there you go. That's how I feel about Merfight right now competitively. I think if you disagree, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in the chat or comments below as I try to get this frickin' thing to work. But yeah, either way, thank you for showing up. Thank you for watching. And if you want to see more stuff like this, feel free to subscribe, like the video, and do everything else you can do to let other people know you like my stuff. All right, I will talk to y'all later. Thank you for watching.